afternoon, everybody. Welcome in to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. June the 4th, we're ready to get things underway and talk about the Maize and Blue. It doesn't want to get involved with talking about Michigan football, the Maize and Blue. There's nobody that doesn't want to. Everybody wants to be involved, and here you are, and let's go. Get it going. Well, greatest intro. There it is. Well, this weekend is June 6th and June 7th. If you've been following along, the Committee on Infractions is going to have a hearing, give you what I think about this weekend and what you should expect. Speaking of expecting things, we want to know what your expectations are for this upcoming season for U of M. And that includes number 19, Bryce Underwood. What your expectations are for the true freshman quarterback, the prodigy, Mr. Number One, Mr. Everything. Is he just going to hit the field and it is just going to be instant All-American? We'll explore that a little bit. I'll tell you where I'm at. I'm not going to be doing, it's going to be sunshine and rainbows and flowers. It's not going to be raining on anybody's parade when it comes down to Underwood. It is, a lot, you say, how is Michigan going to do this year? Immediately you're going to say, well, how do you think Bryce Underwood's going to do? It's kind of one and the same. We'll explore that a little bit. But I think this month and next month, the lead is going to be recruiting. And that is because Michigan, they were off the road, they're back on, and now they're setting up all these official visits, and they've got players coming in. They got players in right now. And what's going to happen with U of M in recruiting in this particular class, the last few years, how things have been going, what I have noticed, it's a trend. You get to a spot in June, you kind of get stuck. And then there are folks that are like, what's wrong? What's wrong with recruiting? Why can't Michigan recruit? You'll have that particular angle. And then you'll have the other one. It's like, we really need to get this momentum. And I don't think there's momentum for fans when it comes to being able to pull in a recruit. You feel like you get one, it's a celebration, it's everything's going right. Boy, the coach has really got it going. Whoever the assistant coach is, the point man, boy, that guy is really shining. It's just fun for everyone because you pay so much attention to it. But I don't think, there's some cases, maybe there's a teammate, maybe two guys have talked about, going to Michigan, and they said, well, you go first and I'll go the next week. Maybe some timing there, but I don't think overall, when people talk about momentum in recruiting, that one guy has really anything to do with another guy. I know you can say, well, what about a quarterback? And there's a wide receiver that okay. But for the most part, it doesn't matter. So when I saw someone today talking about, we just need to get, it was just stalled. There's no momentum. And I was thinking, wasn't it just last week or the week before where they pulled in two tight ends? I don't think either of those had anything to do with some momentum. People just get a taste for it. And I think you just want more. Boom. You throw back that first a drink and just want to say, okay, let's just and that's good. You want another one and another one, following that. But that is all understood. So what I have with recruiting here is that last year, part of the 2025 Michigan class, which ended up being a top 5 class on rivals.com, one of those players was named Julius Holly. And Julius Holly is a defensive end. We'll see. He didn't come in early for spring. If he's going to be a true freshman, that's a tough spot considering the players that Michigan has already. I would expect Holly to redshirt and then you'd see a lot more from him in 27 and certainly in 28. Why am I talking about Holly? Well, Julius Holly has a brother named Jackson, and Jackson is also a defensive player. And Jackson is someone who is the class of not 26, but you look ahead to 27, but he is highly rated. And Jackson Holly is in Ann Arbor right now. And is he spending the entire weekend? I believe that is the case. So, that's a little bit of where you have a brother. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't always mean that some guys want to, blaze their own path, whatever you say, when it comes down to that. But looking at Holly, it's certainly something to monitor that he could be one to watch for Michigan. Now, Zion Robinson, the wide receiver from Texas, he's a 4-star. Michigan wants him. He was in over the weekend. He had a lot of nice things to say. And he's got this picture where he's holding up a Michigan sign that says Michigan Man. He pointed out on his Instagram that he was not committed, but he also, right after he was done with Michigan, decided that now he's got a date that he was going to announce, and he said the end of July. So you have that announcement forthcoming from Zion Robinson. Does it mean anything that as soon as he was done in Ann Arbor, he set the date? Maybe if it was the last visit and then he set the date, you would think, I don't know, I'm trying to read something into that. Oh yeah. At the end of July, he was in Ann Arbor. Obviously he likes Michigan. He's going, he is still set for 3 visits, Stanford and then TCU, and he is from Texas. So I would keep an eye on that one. And then also Miami. That's an interesting 4. You got Michigan and Stanford. That's real. You would say, oh, he's interested in academics. I mean, that's what I think when I'm looking at these 4 teams. And then I see that TCU's in the mix and said, okay, that's his home state college. So that's you understand that. And then he has the U. And in the past, when it came down to the U, that always meant that the player was getting paid, under the table, illegally, a level 1 violation that everybody looked the other way because everybody was doing it. But now everybody can do it, and it's not a level 1 violation. So does it mean that when you see the U, but the U is, I mean, they're an NIL U. I mean, they are paying for players. So it is something, means that you're going to have to be involved, and it's not going to be, I think it'd be maybe a bigger number that when you see the U involved there, that's still for me, but it's interesting when you see the 4, you get Stanford and Michigan and the home state, and then the U, and we'll see, but Michigan in the mix, they want them. And so you have that. So that's what it comes down to with recruiting. Now, I thought that it was interesting today when it came to recruiting, and that, Michigan was back on the road recently. But before that, they were pulled off the road because they had to serve they get these penalties that were imposed from the burger situation. And there were some recruiting issues there. So that's why they were not able to be out on the road. And so now they're back. And there was a thought when somebody today was talking about, well, Michigan's behind, or they got some making up to do because they weren't out on the road. It made me think that when the Committee on Infractions, whatever happens here, you can guess, your guess, my guess, everybody's guess about what's going to happen, that if you hear people speak on it, most people, it seems that most people think that Michigan is not going to have to vacate any wins and that Michigan is not going to be suspended or taken away from being able to compete for the college football playoff. Those things are not going to happen. But what people do say is that Michigan is going to be fined. We know that there's going to be some type of suspension for Sharon Moore. We've seen the Michigan offer. At least that was what was spilled out there for the two games, Oklahoma and Central Michigan, game 3 and game 4. And then the last part of that, and then there'll be some recruiting violations that will be imposed on Michigan. They'll be hit with those. And so what I'm saying, I don't know if you should be worried about that part, but if you feel like they've got some ground to make up now because of what happened a month ago when they weren't out there, and then we know that here in the future they are going to be hit with it. What I'm saying, this sounds a lot, and I'm just kind of just rolling on here. Let me see if I can say it concisely. In that it may be a situation that it is going to ding them when it comes down to their overall class. We don't know what those sanctions are going to be, but it could affect Michigan. If you can't get out there and hit the road and a player is, torn between 2 or 3 schools, and those schools are able to come in and visit a guy, and Michigan's like, can't do anything because they can't contact them, it could play a role. I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom. I don't even know what it's going to be. But I have noticed that a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't matter. In a day and age when you can just, pay money, what's it matter? Michigan can just go out there and it doesn't matter if a scholarship is taken away because they can just pay for it. It doesn't matter that, that they're going to have that violation because, scholarship taken away because of NIL. Well, the part where you might not be able to connect with the players, there could be something there to that. But I haven't heard, maybe you have, and I would give credit if there was somebody who talks or writes about Michigan that says, okay, yeah, this could be a situation where it could hurt recruiting a little bit. Because mostly what I've seen is a narrative of, nope, not going to be that big of a hammer at all. Going to be a little doop, doop. It's going to be nothing. And everybody's going to be emboldened to be like fire back at all of the Michigan rivals and stick their chest out and say, bah, nothing happened. And what I'm saying is that violation part that is imposed, it could end up dinging Michigan a little bit when it comes to what, is very dear to a lot of our hearts, and that is recruiting and being able to get the very best players. They can survive it. They might not even get, it might not be a situation where they get dinged, but a possibility. So I don't know if that's making sense to you or not, but if there's one thing about this NCAA Committee on Infractions, the COI, that I have learned, that I think, you've heard people, it takes a very long time. It takes way too long. It's taking years. They certainly could get it done in months. I think that they could be able to get it done in weeks. And as much as I follow it, and I try to read about every single thing, but people that are at least, like journalists or something, I'm going to read what they have to say about the situation and look at it. But this date of June 6th and June 7th, we were waiting around and thinking, all right, there's going to be a hearing there. My thought is that when I heard that and also was reading that Michigan could possibly have been negotiating behind the scenes, that's where they came out, why the suspension got leaked. And, so, Michigan will know what's coming and all of that. Well, I thought that this weekend that it could just be done. If Michigan's been negotiating behind the scenes, why isn't it just going to be done? They know what's coming. Why doesn't the COI when they have the hearing this week, they're all going to be like, okay, they can put on a show or whatever they want to do, all the reading and stuff that they have to do, but then say, okay, and we'll be, they have 45 days after this hearing to make a ruling. Why do they need that much time? If they've been negotiating and, you got Ward Manuel, who was put up there on a pedestal by college football, being able to be the chairman of the college football committee. And now they're going through all this, and now it's going to be like, oh, nope, 45 days. And then are they going to try to, sprinkle a little bit extra on there for Michigan, and then Michigan can come back and say, no, we're going to want another ruling, and it'll take another couple months. I don't know, so you might be saying, well, you're not making any sense. And I understand that. When it comes to the NCAA and the college or the committee on infractions, it's hard to follow. As soon as I think I have a grasp on it, somebody else comes back and says, nah, it's going to be another year. No. They got 45 days after this one, and they're just talking this weekend. This is just a talk. And then they've got another month and a half before they rule. And then Michigan can come back. They got 60 days. I already thought they did all that. Oh, that's it. And I thought that they were negotiating behind the scenes, and that this weekend we were going to find out, and it was going to be a spot where possibly that this was going to be behind them, and there was not going to be any more. Well, now we'll have to wait for, the ruling. No, I thought that was happening, but that's it. That's where I'm at when it comes down to the hammer. I've seen a lot of Michigan fans talk about reading, like, I guess it would be the equivalent of the Maize and Blue Review over at Michigan State, or some people that really like Michigan State probably on Twitter that are, like trashing Michigan. And then the same thing for Ohio State. I understand that. And nobody's going to listen to me to say, just ignore all of that, or if, don't read it. Well, then there I was last night. And I don't know if it was somebody that worked for one of I don't know who this person was, but they had obviously put a lot of thought into it, because they were going through with a fine-tooth comb the Michigan violations and how they thought, that they should be not included in the playoff for a couple years. Obviously, wins should be vacated, gigantic fines. I mean, they were just going through it, but they had a lot of you'd say research behind it that they were putting in there, but you could tell it wasn't balanced, because they didn't put the Tennessee situation in there, where Tennessee, had going on what they had going on with the 4 or 5 times the amount, I think, of level 1 violations. But I don't know. I say that because I finally had run into one of those people who were just, going after Michigan, and were thinking that, and, it wasn't just like you'd say a troll job. So, hell, the person had put some, like I said, some research behind it to make it seem like, that he might have a point there. So I can understand people reading it and being like, whoa, nobody at Michigan saying, Michigan's all saying this way, and then you feel like it's all Ohio State and all Michigan State, they're saying a completely different thing. Somebody's going to be unhappy. When it comes down, is it going to be something in the middle? I hope not. Hopefully it's more towards what Michigan is saying. All right, we're going to get to expectations, and we're going to get to for the team and Bryce Underwood. I'm definitely going to want to hear from you on that. I do want to tell you that, it's the answer for the summertime Michigan football blues. Do you know what it is? I'm going to tell you right now. And I'm going to tell you that it's not just the Michigan football blues. I'll put Michigan basketball in there as well. And the remedy and the tonic is the Maize and Blue Review. You get in there, it is a breath of fresh air. It is a fountain of information. It is like-minded Michigan fans talking about the upcoming seasons. And, I get it with football. I do it, 3 times a week. But what I found myself doing this week after Michigan was able to get Yaxel and Yaks is that, you put up that starting lineup and you start thinking about what the bench or what the minutes are going to be. The basketball, I think, is football's always right up here, but boy, basketball, there's a lot going on there, and it's really, is it true that it warms my heart? And I think of something it's close to that. The excitement. I've not always felt the love. I always felt that Michigan basketball has always needed more love, even when they're really good. Even when John Beeline had them rolling, I always thought, where's everybody at? Why isn't everybody just going nuts? And where they're at right now, the arrow is just got to, pointed up. And there's just so much excitement there. Go to michigan.rivals.com, join up right now, and you can get instant access today. And all of this where you're sitting around, it's great that the Tigers are doing well. I love that. It's going to bridge the gap where next thing you know, it's going to be like, boom, football starting up. And it's going to be amazing. But along the way, the Maize and Blue Review can hold your hand, and it'll just get you that much more excited for the upcoming season. So with that, I'm going to answer the questions now, and then we're going to get to the expectations for the team and for Underwood. I want to see what you folks are thinking about it. I will tell you where I am at. The Ferris, I like the numbers. He's a numbers guy, and he has been ticking off the days since Ohio State beat Michigan at football, and it's 2013. I like now that we're in the 2000s. It's going to be good when you get up to 2025, 2024, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Those are going to be nice. Those particular years and the corresponding wins over Ohio State, that's going to be great. According to Ferris, 2013 days since OSU beat Michigan at football. Sam pointing out some things on the COI. He is saying Michigan always held a high standard, never any violation, doing things right. And now Michigan seems like they're being investigated for everything. Did Harbaugh taint the program? Well, what I could tell you is something that somebody told me a long time ago when it comes down to the NCAA, is that you don't want to get involved with the NCAA. You don't want them to come looking for anything, because when they come looking, they don't even have to start turning over any stones. Every team has got issues going on. So if you invite that kind of drama, there's going to be some drama that comes in. Luckily, myself, I have not been involved in the justice system, but I have heard plenty of people that do get involved. I don't know, misdemeanors, maybe even something more, felonies, whatever they get involved in. But once you're in the system, you're hit. You get, boom, boom, boom. And that's part of it, Sam. So, that's, they had the one thing, and then, there were small things, and then Michigan didn't necessarily cooperate because Harbaugh was like, leave. There's plenty of other teams that are doing a hell of a lot more. Leave us alone. Or I think Harbaugh played the same song that a lot of other teams have played on their level 1 violations. Like, I don't remember what violations, not here. And where they could have dealt with them in a better manner. I think looking back at it, I think that's fair to say. And it wouldn't have complicated and compiled like it has. But that's it. Dominic talking violations. He doesn't understand what Michigan did wrong. Not once has any of these suspensions made any rational sense when many programs are doing a lot more atrocious things than anything we've been accused of. Well, if you look at it like that, Dominic, I completely understand that. Michigan, if you wanted to say Michigan is getting the book thrown at them for jaywalking, while other teams are, driving 90 miles an hour without their headlights on at 2:00 in the morning, I could see why you would say that. But, the thing is that they got tripped up, and then instead of cooperating, a lot of people are like, we don't want to cooperate. They didn't cooperate. And so then when it came back with another thing, and these things just stacked up. So I don't want to get through, what they did and didn't do wrong. Sounds like I'm just piling on Michigan then, and people like want to fight at every point, like, no, they didn't really do that. Maybe Harbaugh really didn't. Okay, you could find out what they did wrong. But your point, and I remember saying this, and do I regret saying it? A little bit. I said that just because everybody else is doing things wrong is not a good excuse for you doing wrong things. And I would like to take that back. In this sport, where for many years, if not the entire time that I've been watching it, a level 1 violation, one of the worst things that you could do, sort of cheating in school, that would be paying players. That used to be a heinous act, but every team, all the championship team, all the successful team, the SEC was doing it so much, everybody was kind of like, we don't care. And the part about it is that the fans really didn't care. And the teams didn't care because they were having success. And the NCAA couldn't do anything about it because they would ask the players, like, hey, did you get any money? And they'd be like, no. And then they don't have subpoena power. Not like you could take a coach and say, hey, put your right hand up. So they would ask the coach, hey, did you give Jackie Smith $100,000? They would say no. And that's it. They couldn't do anything about it. And then everybody started to do it. And then everybody was kind of like, who cares if they're getting paid? Who cares? And everyone is doing it. Everyone should have just done it. And so, that's part of it where, in Michigan, it appears to me that it is something that they took to heart and took seriously, that they weren't going to blatantly commit the level 1 violations and just hand money over to the players. And looking back, I think they should have. Nobody cares. And all the successful teams were doing it, and they weren't able to do anything about it. So I don't know. That's it when it comes down to that part. Let's see. Sam, this is an interesting one that this comes right from, if you have a playbook of let's defend Michigan, and Michigan has done nothing wrong, and it's all the NCAA, and they're jealous of Michigan, they're jealous of Harbaugh. There are a lot of people that feel that way, and I think there's a point to some of it. This point is always made right up at the top, is that Harbaugh advocated for the athletes to get paid, and so the NCAA is really sticking it to him because of that. That may be true. I would like to see the exact timing. What I do remember is that it was 2023. Michigan was already in some of the hot water for the Burgergate, and then Harbaugh came out with his public stance about. It was at one of the news conferences. It might have been the first one of the year where he was like, and I think the players should get, he came out, he had this little piece of paper. I want to say a few things. And it was basically like, the football players should be getting paid. And I remember so he's like, I don't know what the how to do it. I just know that they should be getting paid. So he said that. But I don't think he said that before he was in trouble for the Burgergate situation. It was in the middle of the sign and the burgers, but a lot of Michigan fans have put that in front and making it sound like, oh, they're going after Harbaugh because he wanted the players to get paid. And I don't think the timing actually lines up that way, but I don't, hey, whatever makes you feel good about it, right? And again, because I'm sitting here and it's a Michigan podcast, maybe I should just join up with everybody else and people say, yeah, let's just take that line and just roll with it. Everybody just say, hey, They're after Harbaugh because he wanted the players to get paid, and that's why they're sticking it to him. Whether it's true or whether that timeline stands up or not, I don't think it does, like I said. But it is it's one that definitely people, play to. They definitely do. Ted. I like Ted. I liked, Ted D. It wasn't just because last show Ted D dropped, 2 NIL bags on us. He's got the, he's an animal lover. He's got a dog as his avatar. So I like that. And he's a Michigan fan. So, that's 2 for 2. And then 3 for 3 for Ted D. He's saying having solid quarterback play will make all the difference in the world. Let's get to that because we're going to talk about the expectations for Michigan and Bryce Underwood. Cut from a different cloth is talking about behind the scenes info you have. Do you think things will play out? Wait, from the behind the scenes info you have, how do you think things will play out with respects to the NCAA versus U of M? Well, isn't that the $1 million question? I was thinking that this weekend that we were going to get some sort of conclusion because Michigan has been working behind the scenes, negotiating behind the scenes with the Committee on Infractions. Michigan has it has felt, and it's not just from the Michigan side. Pete Thamel he said it. He said it in a number of stories, but at least 2 stories, because I saw another one that I was reading today that he said he doesn't expect that there to be any vacated wins, and he doesn't expect Michigan to be banned from the college football playoff. Those 2 items from the Michigan side, I'll give it up to Trevor McHugh and Josh Henschke, both the senior editor and the editor of the Maize and Blue Review, have said all around, those are non-starters. Is that the right? That is not happening. Michigan was going to fight all the way to the end, if that could happen. So those 2 things were going to be in place. So then you go to the more being suspended because of the text and whether or not they're going to accept those 2 games. I think it's kind of 50-50 on that. I think that the College Committee on Infractions has heard everybody else outside of Michigan saying, no, they don't get to pick the 2 games. It's the first 2 games of the year, not 3 and 4. So it'll be interesting to see if that'll seem like a win for Michigan. If it is 2 games and it is game 3 and game 4, that will seem like a little bit of a win. And then, hitting Harbaugh and Stallions with show causes, I think everybody expects that. That's going to happen. And so then it comes down to what the fine is going to be. I don't know. It's going to be pretty big, pretty eye-opening. You want to start to get, 15 million, 20 million. Some people think a lot higher. Some people think way lower. I don't know. I'll guess 15 million. And then it comes down to those recruiting points that they're going to put in. Whatever the recruiting restrictions that they will impose. And then how will that affect their upcoming classes? It's going to affect their ability to get out on the road. It's going to affect their ability to have the scholarships, but maybe they can work around that because of NIL. I don't know. So can I make that into a brief statement? What do I expect? I expect that more to be suspended, recruiting violations imposed, and a fine. And that will seem like a win for Michigan. But I also think that they're going to really make it look like a big laundry list when it comes down to those recruiting restrictions and the things that they'll impose, where other fans can be like, wow, they're really throwing the book. And I also think it'll be a bad day. Of course, it's going to be a bad day for Stallions, and it should be. It's also going to be a bad day for Harbaugh. Not that it matters, he's not coming back, but they're going to really drag him through the mud and make him look like, make him look dirty. And, he's a big boy. He can handle it and everything, but that's not going to be a fun day. So I do think that's going to happen. Whew. True Blue Tom. Good afternoon. I officially retired from IKEA after over 19 years. Go Blue. Well, True Blue, congratulations on your retirement. And I got to say that True Blue Tom, I've known True Blue Tom for I think 30 years. True Blue Tom is a legend on the radio. True Blue Tom had his own Ufer horn that when he used to call in when I worked in Ann Arbor, I would play. And then I went with my wife a long time ago when we were dating to IKEA, and there was True Blue Tom at IKEA. And he was like, good afternoon. And we talked Michigan football. Heck, I don't think that was 19 years ago, but that was about 10 years ago that I saw True Blue over there. He's a legend. And then I didn't know how big of a legend he was going to be, but then, I would talk with him on the radio and then I would see him at IKEA, but then I would just be sitting back and I would be, watching a Michigan basketball game. And I'd be sitting there and then the TV would cut to the crowd. And there would be True Blue Tom in the front row with a sign that said, Go Blue. And it didn't just happen once. I've probably seen True Blue Tom at games with signs on TV double-figure times. I don't think there's nobody that I've seen more on TV cheering for Michigan and in cutaways from the game than True Blue Tom. Right, Trevor? Let's go. There's Trevor B. Trevor, I'll get back to you. Sam still loves Coach too. Yeah, Jim Harbaugh, great coach, great player, and great coach. Corey G. All the dirt the SEC does, but they want to come after Michigan for this. Yeah, there's a point to that. Tom had a big party at IKEA last week. He's going to be doing some traveling and helping with the grandchildren. Yeah, well, Tom, I expect you to be traveling down to, Norman, Oklahoma in early September. Maybe making a trip to Lincoln in late September. Maybe take a trip out to California, Tom, in mid-October. I hear the LA Coliseum. I've never been there myself, but October 11th, there should be something going on. Take the grandchildren to go out there. LTM says they are nervous about how Michigan is going to treat NIL. We are going to be the Dallas Cowboys of football, coming from a Steelers fan, but we will have more money to spend than everyone else. That would be nice. I don't know if that's true. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe they are. Maybe they do have just money and a treasure trove and gold and cash. And maybe Ellison is said, hey, we're in for a penny with Bryce. We're in for a pound. Let's go. Let's buy. They want to put recruiting restrictions on us. Let's just bowl them over. Live style. Going that way. Excuse me. LTM also saying Michigan just has been this blue-collar team that if we do something right but better, it is going to be scary to the rest. That's good. Here's Smash, who's talking about the president, and Ono, who did not get into Florida. This has been a popular topic around the water cooler. You can say all kinds of things. Actually, across the country, wasn't it Joel Klatt? It was like very interesting timing. He said with Santa Ono leaving. Smash says that Santa left Michigan not because of sports. It was academic and political reasons. Well, Florida does not believe in Santa, what we have found out there. What I have also seen from people that follow this situation is that, they thought, oh no, wasn't over this way enough for Michigan, and he wasn't over this way enough for Florida. And so he got hit kind of coming and going. Tough spot, for Ono. I would think, without knowing all the particulars that go into the politics that have to be at play and with everything else, if I was Santa, I would have wanted my agent. And so he was going to get paid a lot more money down in Florida. Sunshine, that sounds like a good deal. Michigan's got the regents, all these, protests going on. And there's a lot of stuff going on in all the colleges across the world or all across America. But I thought, no, I could see why, he's why he's doing this. He's been jumping around anyway. So, why not, take off and go down to Florida? Maybe it would be easier on him, but you would think that his agent would have had a better understanding of that they're going to, if he's going to resign, if you're going to resign from one job, you would think that you're going to be getting the other job, or you don't resign. You got to make sure that's a sure thing. You got to figure that out. And they ran the end around on Santa. Now Santa is going to be standing there and saying, we'll work for, he's going to be out there with his reindeer or whatever else. I don't know what's going on with Santa now. A lot of Santa talk. I give it up. The thing with me with Santa is that he put himself in a pickle. Hadley wants to talk about Santa not getting the votes. He says, Michigan, could they rehire him? Not. I don't think that if you're at a job and you're like, hey, I'm going to greener pastures, really want to thank everybody. Here's my 2-week notice. So long. Then you go down there, you don't get a job. You can't really, come back and be like with your hat in hand, like, hey, all that. I'd like to come back to Michigan. Yeah. I don't think that is going to happen with it, The hammer is made of foam, according to True Blue Tom. Oh, Ferris, you want to talk Santa. Ferris wants to talk Santa. He's talking all of it. He's talking politics. He's talking all of it. Keegan jumping in. Keegan, they don't care. They can't handle the truth, right, Keegan? And here's Ted. Ted says, hey, Tom, congrats. Congrats on your retirement, Tom. And what do we have? We have an emoji with a little party hat. That's good. Okay. We could do this all day. Yeah, good. There's those road trips coming up. So the expectations for Michigan this year, the expectation for Michigan is to make the college football playoff. And for that, Michigan, I would say they get it, get to 10-2 will get you in the college football playoff. And so, but what I find interesting is I was looking at this schedule for Michigan is that 2 of their 4 toughest games, I think we would all agree, is going to be Ohio State, at USC, at Nebraska, and at Oklahoma. Maybe you see it differently, but I think most people would say that those are going to be their 4 toughest. So 2 out of their first 4 games are going to be 2 of their toughest. That is at Oklahoma and at Nebraska. So we are going to find out in the first 4 weeks if Michigan is really going to be for real this year or not. I think that we will know on September 20th at night. 3 weeks into September, we're going to know like if this is Michigan going to be a pretender or contender for the college football playoff. And the thing that I think about Underwood is that a lot of people, Michigan fans, I don't think they put a lot of thought into the possibility that Underwood might not just be the greatest thing ever, that he might not just, hit the ground and just like be an instant All-American. I think that's what people expect. And I want to start with that point right there. So me talking about other quarterbacks, number one or number two quarterbacks each and every year, 5-star quarterbacks, and how they have played over and the true freshman quarterbacks that have been out there and how they have fared. I think people are interested in looking at a little bit, but Underwood is what everyone, if you're a sports fan, he's the chosen one. And a lot of times down through the years, whatever sport that you're talking about, these chosen ones, they actually come out and they do live up to the hype. I think about, hockey. I don't know about Connor Bedard right now for the Blackhawks, but before him, it was McDavid, for the Oilers, who are going to play game one of the Stanley Cup Final. Like, this guy's the next Wayne Gretzky. Well, he might be the next Wayne Gretzky. And I just go down the line in hockey. Oh, Lemieux, this guy's he was great. And I can remember getting a Wayne Gretzky hockey card in 1980. And on the back, they had a little caricature up there, and it said, Wayne is considered the best hockey prospect since Guy Lafleur. And they were right. Gretzky was the great prospect, and Crosby was another one. And every year they don't have one of these guys, but a lot of times LeBron James, he was like the next Michael Jordan. And certainly there were a lot of guys that were touted as being the next Jordan that didn't end up this way. But I bring it all back to sometimes when you're looking at a quarterback like Underwood, and he's Michigan's coach, there's a chance that he is the greatest thing ever, and it's right off the bat. That he goes out there and he is just, tears it up. Precocious. He is the real deal. He is the prodigy from game one. There is that chance. And I think a lot of Michigan fans are just like, you know what? I'm just going to ride with that. It makes me feel good, and it could happen. So why not just do that? Why not just ride it? It's Bryce Underwood. Because thinking that, well, he might not be all that right off the bat, that's not a lot of fun to think of. But I will say this, just that I think that ultimately he's going to be great, Bryce Underwood. But I think that this year he's going to be more serviceable than what you would call a great quarterback. I think next year he's going to be great. And I think the next year after that, he's going to be great. And ultimately, do I think he's going to be picked number one overall in the draft? Maybe. I mean, laying it down like, oh, for sure. I don't know. I'm sure. But do I think in 3 years he could be the number one overall pick? I do. But I believe that I just saw people talking about the game against Oklahoma. That's a game that I think that Michigan will likely lose. And yeah, I point to John Mateer, who's, the top transfer quarterback. And a lot of people are like, Mateer, he ain't all of that. And that's fine if you think about that. They got a running back from Cal, supposed to be pretty good too. No, it's fine. Venables is a clown. He's had a few years. He can't get it right. That you're just going on Oklahoma's name and not really what they have. I think those are all, you might have a point with all of those. Oklahoma might not be all of that. But I feel like I've seen enough QBs, and actually even in the spring game, you know what I saw from Bryce Underwood? I saw the strong arm, but you know what else I saw? I saw 2 delay a game penalties. I saw a pick that he wasn't on the same page with a wide receiver. I saw him nearly fumble the ball, taking a snap under center. And those are all things, kid's 17 years old. Those are all things that I would say you kind of expect that in a practice, a spring game, because that's what happens. I mean, it's a very tough position to play. So I expect that he will go to Norman, and he's going to have a tough time because, it's way different than playing, Howell on a Friday night than playing freaking, Oklahoma on the road, at night on a Saturday in the second week of the season. It doesn't mean that he can't go and Michigan can win. But what I would say is that for Michigan, what is good and why they might end up just winning that game is that he could be an instant All-American. It also could take some time, like I said, but he could have a setback or two. But Michigan, they're not just going to throw it all on Underwood's right arm. They're going to, I don't think that Underwood would throw the ball 20 times against Oklahoma. If there was a line, if I went into a sports book and it said over and under on Underwood 26, if they put it at Oklahoma throwing the ball, I would bet the under. Because I think he would. I don't think he's going to throw the ball 20 times. I think Michigan. I don't think their defense is going to be as good as last year, but I think it's going to be pretty good. I think they got a lot of depth, and that front seven that looks good to me. That front seven looks pretty good, and so they've got that going for them. That travels. That's nice, and they also are going to run the ball a lot. And you can look to last year. I throw last year's numbers out the window because Michigan didn't have a quarterback. And yeah, that's, we can sit around saying, I don't know what Sharon Moore was doing there, but, they have a quarterback now, but they'll rely on the running game and they'll rely on their defense and they'll rely on Zavada. So they'll rely on the defense, the running game, and the special teams. They don't have to have an All-American future number 1 overall pick, Bryce Underwood, throwing the ball all over the place against Oklahoma. And they could still win that game. So those are my expectations. I think that he is going to be serviceable in his freshman year. He will get better. The cliche would be, well, he'll be better from, week 1 to week 2. I don't know. New Mexico is the worst team in college football. But I do think that he'll be better at Nebraska than he was at Oklahoma because he'll have been through that. And so Nebraska is one of their 2 of their 4 toughest games too. But I think that he will be better. So that's in September. I think that he'll be a lot better in October than he will be in September. And, so can you survive September? I can tell you this, if Michigan beats Oklahoma and they beat Nebraska and they're sitting there going into October and they don't have a loss, the idea is going to be that Michigan is making the college football playoff. The idea is Michigan is in a real good spot to get to the college football playoff. And if they're clean through September, well, then you might even, raise the stakes even more than thinking about, hey, just getting to the college football playoff. So that's how I feel. That was a long, hey, what's your expectations of Michigan football this year? And Bryce Underwood, talk for 20 straight minutes. That's what I just did. Let's take some of the feedback on the expectations for Michigan. Going to be a scary team, says LTM. Ted D. The Michigan D should be pretty elite with competent quarterback play, good O-line play, and a good running game. Michigan should be in great position for a successful season. If we just break this down, this is the way you say it. Pretty elite. That means, to me, college football playoff. And Ted isn't putting everything on the shoulders of the 17-year-old right now. He's just talking about competent quarterback play. They didn't have that last year. Competent quarterback play. Yes, the O-line. We can all, and everybody's shaking their head on that. Yeah. Hell, they might be playing a true freshman left tackle and a true freshman quarterback on September 6th at Oklahoma. It's a little scary, but hey, it's a different time, and Michigan's a big time program. You got big time talent. They might put Babalola's name up there, and it might be right next to Underwood and saying, this is Michigan. They are a young team on offense. Look at this. The most important position on the football field, and then one of the most important positions at left tackle, and they have 2 true freshmen manning the post in the second game. Wow. Could happen. And in fact, if I, here I am again talking about putting money down, but I think as things stand, that's where I would put my money. I think Babalola and Underwood will start that game. Yes, a good running attack. I feel like they could have that. And a great position for a successful season. Yeah. Corey's talking about running the table. I like running the table talk. I like people talking about going undefeated. I like it. I used to say, Corey, that look, in my life, Michigan, they did it before 23, and I always say, look, it happened one time, in 50 years or whatever. So, talking about every year running the table, but here is the one thing before Rich Rod took over. So it was about 40 years of watching Michigan football. And this is why you become a fan of Michigan, is that you feel like, the season could come down to 5 plays. And if Michigan gets the majority of those 5 plays to go their way, then they can have a great season. They get all 5 going their way. Maybe they could have an undefeated season, but can they get 3 of them that would go their way? I think about the championship season. If we would go to the 5 plays, I would go to that 4th down play to Blake Corum on that final drive against Alabama. Heck, you might get, 2 out of the 5 plays right in that game. I would say that play to Corum also, I forgot the name of the punt returner where the ball was, he muff it and it went back to the goal line. It was like 6 inches from the goal line. Thrice, I can't remember his name. So 2 of those plays were in that one. The third one, I'd go to the Ohio State game. There might be 2 plays in that game. One of them was the interception, I would say, by Rod Moore. Marvin Harrison cut off the interception that sealed the game. I might go with a Roman Wilson touchdown. I did the Ohio State one and taken off the board. There are 4 plays. What other ones am I going to? Maybe Sainristil still pick against Maryland. Maybe I'd have to go to that Penn State game. Maybe the key play in that Penn State game. There's 5, but you can play that game. And Michigan is feeling pretty good running the table. The Oklahoma game is going to be a big deal. A win against them would mean a lot to many. I agree with that. The Oklahoma game is going to be a big deal, and a win against them would mean a lot. I'll just put myself in the category of many. Sam says Drew Henson didn't live up to the hype. I disagree with that. Drew Henson did live up to the hype. Sam, Drew Henson got hurt. And then Drew Henson got his first start at Illinois. And you know what he was in that game? Great. He was great in that game. And then Henson lost 2 games, 32-31 to Purdue. It was great against Drew Brees, back and forth. That wasn't Drew Henson's fault. Oh, he was great in that game. They lost another game, what was it, 54-51? Something like that. At Northwestern. He was great in that game. And Anthony Thomas, who is a great Michigan back, dropped the ball They handed it to him. Nobody came in. He just dropped it. And that was that. Now, Henson went to, you're saying, I know what you're saying is that, he was prodigy, and I was talking about all these guys that, are talked about as being the greatest ever, and then they don't live up to the hype. But on the football field, Henson did live up to the hype. And if Henson would have come back to Michigan, he would have been the Heisman front runner. He would have been a quarterback that would have been taken in the first round. Hell, if he would have come out after his junior year, I was at the same year as Vic, he probably would have been taken in the first round there. He'd been taken in front of Drew Brees. And he just went and played baseball. And then, unfortunately for Henson, he was trying to serve two masters, and that's tough. That's why these guys, there's a few that have been able to do it, but mostly you got to concentrate on one sport to get to college. Henson's playing baseball, he's playing football, but he went to his true love and was able to, went to play baseball. And sure enough, he wasn't a superstar. So if that's your point, it's well taken. But I would also say that he did live up to the hype as a quarterback in college football, but it was only 1 year. But he was great. Beat Ohio State. He was awesome when he got the job. Smash! Dennis loves a parade. How about another one for Michigan? One for Michigan basketball, one for the Tigers, and one for the Lions. I will go to any Michigan parade for basketball and football. Would I go to a Tigers parade? I love a parade. And a Lions parade. I was set, even though I do love a parade, on Memorial Day, my daughter. I thought she wanted to go. I was going to take her to the parade, and we pulled the plug at the last minute. And she said, "I'm sorry, you love a parade." I was like, "It's true. I do." Oh, Ted, come on now. Maybe I got to start thinking about, Oklahoma. Maybe I got to start thinking about it. It hadn't even crossed my mind, Ted, but the more people that are saying they're going to Norman. They're going to OKC. They're going to see the Sooners try to take out Bryce Underwood in the first night. Oh, man. Are you kidding me? Woo, Michigan, here's somebody else. Run the table. Like I said, I like run the table talk. It's fun. I missed whatever we're talking about here. Meteor. We're talking about steaks. Smash the Numbers is talking numbers. Let's see what he says. Bryce had 80% of the awesomeness of JJ would be fine by me. Michigan literally had me at quarterback last year, and I can't even throw a 10-yard spiral pass. Well, here's the thing about, JJ just played, a handful of plays in his true freshman year. I remember, he was running around. He was he made that splash play. It was pretty awesome. But so, yeah, an 80% Bryce of JJ's actually sophomore season is what you're talking about. I would take that too. Absolutely. But that's the thing. The true freshman piece is the part where I don't know, Al Kaline. Did Al Kaline play one? You see baseball players. Baseball players is one that you usually say, look, these guys got to develop. You got to go down to the minors. You can't rush them up. You go right through. But then every once in a while, you get a guy like Al Kaline who doesn't spend one day in the minors. Kaline goes right from wherever he was from, Baltimore, I believe, high school, right to the Tigers. There are not many guys that do that. Underwood, we're hoping not only that he does it, but that he hits the ground running. He is going to be helped by a running game and a defense. I think he is going to have those two things, which, a serviceable Underwood for that first month might be able to get you into October where he is, where then he is going to be way better, like I said before. And there we go. And that's what Corey's talking about. A defensive game. If we can run the ball, we'll definitely win. Well, Corey's talking about running the table. I like the talk. I think, yes, sir, the USC game is going to be interesting. Wouldn't mind going to the USC game either. Yeah, it is. It's a tough one, traveling to the West Coast. Never an easy thing. That's right. We'll take a few more. Oh, thaw. Ice. Maybe there it is. Thank you. Jake Thaw. Woo! Oh, I don't believe, there are always these couple morons, knuckleheads, and, would send somebody something on Twitter like, oh, Jake, like if he would have muffed that one and Michigan would have lost the game. There would have been a few people that would have sent mean tweets to Jake Thaw, but instead he's a hero. How much are we talking? That much? Woo! About the distance that Harbaugh thought that Michigan got, or that JT Barrett was short. About the same thing that Thaw had between the goal line there. Ooh, Ferris is going to the USC game. But you're going you got to buy multiple games to get that. That sounds stupid because they don't sell out their stadium. Dave disagrees with what? Oh. Yeah. Henson, you and I agreed with that. I'm like, what are you doing, Dave? That's it. We'll take a few more here. I've watched, what did I watch? 2. I just watched Ripley. Anybody watch that? Netflix. I think 40s black and white noir, very artsy film. I think it's 8 episodes long. I almost turned it off, but I stuck with it. And if it wasn't for the majestic scenes of Palermo and Sicily and Atrani, and just sitting back and looking at, drinking some coffee at a cafe, with the water out there, I thought, I'll stay reading the newspaper, those kind of things. I stuck with it. And then one of the most majestic cities of all time and mysterious, Venice, Italy. And when I saw that, I knew I was staying with it. I think that's like the last couple episodes. And in the end, it's not going to be for everyone, but a lot of times the first 3 or 4 episodes on that were definitely, I almost, you're talking about turning it off. I definitely going thumbs down, and it was maybe it's going to be thumbs down. And then even I didn't even like necessarily ending, but I got to go thumbs up on it in the end. How about that? Ted, and with Ted along the way here, Ted dropping 2 gigantic bags. What are we going to do here? Stay on all day. Let's do it. I want to play LSU, and I don't care where. I wouldn't mind snagging their 5-star wide receiver. Let's see what Sam says. The Michigan fan expectation in a superstar homegrown Michigander can be touchy if they don't make it out. Yeah, well, I got to say that Underwood, since he flipped, has like completely flipped. Michigan football is going to be okay. But last year, after the Illinois loss, So it was the Washington loss, and then it was followed up by the Illinois loss. Yeah, they beat Michigan State, which was nice. And then they lost to Oregon. Then they lost to Indiana. I was like, ooh. I mean, it was getting a little gamey. And then they flipped Underwood. And then they beat Northwestern. And they beat Ohio State. And then they beat Alabama. So, yeah, since Underwood has flipped, man, he is doing it. He is at there's Rip, got in late. He loves the cinematography with Ripley. Yeah, that part, Rip Star. You like cinematography? You like the what do you call it? There's a cigarette ashtray. You like the glass ashtray? And I knew the girl, when I looked up, there's a young lady that stars in there, and I thought, oh, who's this? At one point I looked it up, and I don't remember what she was in as a, I don't know, like 6-year-old or something. She played some role that I really liked, but she was pretty good at it too. But yeah, you didn't know. The old Tom Ripley, you didn't really know, but whether he was Mr. Greenleaf or whatever else. But yeah, the cinematography, and I want to go to Sicily, and I want to go to Roma, and I want to go back to Venice. Let's do it. Rip's giving it a 10 out of 10. Woo! Rip, like I said, I was ready to just turn it off. And then it was coming back around a little bit. I stuck with it, probably because of the cinematography, like what you're talking about there. And in the end, I liked it. Yes, he's always running. I don't give things away when it comes down to these things. Like I say, I give it a thumbs up. So if you like, if you feel like you could watch a black and white, some people would say a black and white movie, I'm not watching. So some people would be, that's another non-starter, right, Rip? They're not going to watch it. 40s noir? The hell with that. And it's not action-packed. So a 40s noir, black and white, a little slow and a little artsy. And you could say, you want me to watch 8 hours of that? What was there was it called The Actor? It was called something like that. It won an Oscar about 10 years ago. And it was all black and white until like the last scene. I think the dog, close to the actor or something like that. But I thought that was an excellent movie. And I can remember talking about it on the radio, and people were like, that movie sucked. It was in black and white. It was not only in black and white, but I think that there was no dialogue. Is that true? I don't remember, but I like that movie too. So, maybe, and it's not always when you see Rotten Tomatoes give it a real high score and you think, all right, I'm going to be watching something that all these artsy people think is so great. And then it ends up not being that. But this one, it did it for me. I took it. Yeah. The music, Rips want to talk about. Yeah, the music, and then also I kept walking around the house and saying grazie, and I kept when I leave, I told my wife arrivederci, and my wife's like, okay, enough of the arrivederci and grazie. But that's what I always like to say. There it is. One more. We wrap it up with Ferris, who says this year he would take either an OSU win or a trip to the playoffs. That is realistic. Never mind. It has been 13 days since OSU beat Michigan. We can Sharpie that one as a W. Well, I'll play the either or game. I get either a trip to the college football playoff or a win against OSU automatically. Yeah, you like either one of those, but I'll have to take the college football playoff berth because I believe that you're going to have to be 10-2. So Michigan would go 10-1 into their game against Ohio State. Let's say they lose at USC. They only lose one game, and then they just drop one to Ohio State, and then they're still in the college football playoff. They get in at 10-2. I would take that because then I'm thinking they could win that first game. Would they be hosting that game? Well, they have a pretty good ranking. I got to believe that at 10-2 that they could be potentially hosting a playoff game. I don't know how far. So the first, this is the last year, the first 4 in that are going to get buys. And so then, how about a playoff game in Ann Arbor? That's what I'm taking. That's what I'm taking with me. I'll do it. Okay. That is going to do it. Like I said, if you're thinking, man, this time of year sucks, I can't wait for football. There are thousands of people just like you, and they're all sitting over at the Maize and Blue Review, and they're all like, hey, we can't wait for football either. They're counting down the days. They're thinking about every single thing that they possibly can about Michigan. And I got to say this, they have, with each professional sport, they'll have a thread. Like so the Tigers. And there are probably 5 to 10 Tiger fans on there that know every single thing about the Tigers. They know every nuance, every pitch, every player, every trade, every statistic, everything that you could possibly want to know, every metric about the Tigers. And they just constantly, there's like 5 or 10 of these experts that are in there. And they just are it almost feels like 24 hours straight. That's all they do. They're in but I know they do more because they are on some other threads too, but they're 5 to 10. There's others that come in like me. I jump in there once in a while and I'll be like, nice catch, Parker Meadows, welcome back. Things like that. But these guys, they're watching every game. They're reading every article. They are looking at every metric. And you want a complete, feel like you're completely immersed and, caught up in some Tiger fever. It's there. The Maize and Blue Review. That's happening too. My testimonial for the Tigers thread on the Den on the Maize and Blue Review. That's going to do it. Thanks so much for participating. And we'll be back with another show on Friday. We'll see you over on the Maize and Blue Review on the Den. Till then, everybody have a great day. See ya.